Cheers. Welcome to Culture Night,
where each week we drink fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sarah, and we are here for a bonus episode.
Woo!
Happy Valentine's Day. This is coming out on Valentine's Day, so if you are watching it on actual Valentine's Day, I hope you're having a wonderful day. And if you're not watching it, I hope this just gets you in the mood to love.
Maybe it motivates you to watch this with us tonight.
Yes. Yes, it's morning time right now if you're listening to it right when it's released. So maybe you'll listen to this and think, I haven't seen that movie in a while. I'll watch it tonight.
And I will let you know if it's culturally significant.
All right. Anyways, so we do have a little bit of podcast business. In the spirit of Valentine's Day, we figured that this bonus episode that has nothing to do with the current season that we are in would be a good time to announce what our next season of our season 5 theme is going to be. So I can't believe we've been around for 5 seasons already, but...
Good drum roll sound effect. Here we go. Drum roll.
Rom-coms.
Woo!
So, tonight we are obviously watching a rom-com because it is Valentine's Day, but we decided that we have watched the science fiction, that it was time for something a little more lighthearted with some rom-coms. We plan to do one rom-com from each decade between the 1960s to the 2010s. So if you have an absolute favorite rom-com from any of those decades, please give us suggestions. We are trying to find the best ones from each decade. So
I think rom-coms kind of also brings this show kind of back to its roots. I think that was kind of somewhat of your original vision with some of the old classic rom-coms in a sense. So it'd be fun to kind of get back to that first season.
Yes. I'm very excited. I have subtly been I think we need to do rom-coms for a while now. So I'm very excited that it's coming back. So we're popping in with one quick rom-com for today. And then we have a couple more episodes of season 4, and then we will jump into season 5 rom-coms. But for tonight, it's Valentine's Day. So let's start with, what are we drinking?
Tonight we are drinking the 2018 Private Stash from Tobin James.
Ooh. Now, from what I remember, these Private Stashes are nice.
Yes. It is a blend of 52% Cab Sav, 30% Merlot, and 18% Cab Franc.
Oh, Cab Franc.
Our favorite varietal.
Yeah.
It is aged in French oak barrels, and our vineyard yields less than 1 ton per acre of this to intensify and concentrate the flavors. So it's a small batch, which is, I guess, why they call it Private Stash. So
it is very pungent in a pleasant way. Just was not expecting such aggressive aromas on the nose.
A lot of berry, strawberry, I think I got.
It smells similar to one of the ones we've had recently. I'm not sure which one that is. I want to say maybe the Malbec. Maybe the Zinfandel. Obviously, none of those grapes are in this, but I love the subtle little head nod or head turn as you're processing what you're tasting.
Yeah, it's just kind of lighter than I thought.
It doesn't have a crazy aftertaste. It's kind of the flavors all at once.
A little bit tart. I can kind of feel my nose sweating a little bit, but it's lighter and brighter than I thought.
But still pretty smooth. Doesn't leave an aggressive alcohol taste. Yeah, very tart.
Very good. Excited to enjoy that as we watch this movie, and we'll let you guys know our thoughts after the movie.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Now,
speaking of the movie, what are we watching tonight?
Tonight, we are watching Valentine's Day from...
Who would have thunk it?
Which is really on brand. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I really leaned into the theme. I got my Valentine's Day clothes on. This movie is from 2010, and it is rated PG-13. All
right. So let's hop back into our time machine back to 2010, which feels like it shouldn't be that long ago.
Oh.
But it's 14
is that
years
14
ago.
Years ago?
Yeah. It feels like it should be 3, maybe up max 6 years ago.
I might be having some kind of heart palpitations or something from that. Ooh, that hurts.
Yeah, that's painful. Anyways, back in 2010, the top 3 movies released that year were Toy Story 3, grossing $415 million, Avatar, grossing $408 million, and Alice in Wonderland, grossing $334 million.
Also note that Avatar came out in December of 2009, so that was a
little cheating there.
Got a little extra time. But
the top 3 songs released that year were TikTok by Kesha, hell yeah, Need You Now by Lady Antebellum, another banger, and Hey Soul Sister by Train. Ooh, banger after banger after banger.
I was looking at the Billboard Top 100 and I was like, oh my God.
What a great time for music.
Songs. Very nostalgic.
So
I am feeling back 14 years ago to 2010. I don't know about you, but have you seen this movie before?
I have not.
I have many times. I own the DVD. I did not bring it down to showcase like before.
Ancient relic.
I figured I'd spare everybody
Knock the dust off that.
So tell us what you know about it.
Nothing about it. I believe, wasn't there, it's probably not this since you said it's a rom-com, but wasn't there a like horror movie called Valentine's Day or something?
From my trying to figure out where we could watch it.
Prom Night.
I think there was definitely some other Valentine's Day titled movies out there in my quick search to try to find this one to watch it. I do not. It is not a horror movie. So what I know about this movie is that it's probably not a horror movie. That's really all you know about this? That's it. Well, you are in for a treat. I didn't realize that you hadn't seen it before when I was suggesting it all week. So that makes me even more excited because I feel like for so many, almost like 90% of the movies, you've seen them and I have not. That it's really nice when the table is flipped a little bit. Yeah. All right. So I don't think we have any other notes. We're keeping it short on the front end this time. And we're going to jump into Valentine's Day. Check you later. We're back. Cheers. All right. That was Valentine's Day. It was certainly a movie. Oh, but Lord. Before we get into the movie, let's start with the wine scale. Okay. Our wine scale is a 0 to 10 scale. However, our scale is heavily weighted because all the wines we drink on the show are very good wines. So a low score does not necessarily mean that it is a bad wine because, as I said, all the wines we drink are very good. That being said, I rate this wine a 4.7. Okay, I was close. I was going to give it a 5.2. It didn't do much for me. I don't know. I was expecting a bit more from the varietals that were listed. I feel like we generally do like the private stashes more than I like this one, but I'm afraid at this point, this deep into the podcast, that they all kind of taste the same. I mean, yes, we get different notes, but like every time I'm like, oh, like I can smell it from the first smell. Like this is a really good wine, and so they all just kind of blend together in my brain, and it's not like before we were drinking all like, what's the nicest $8.99 bottle of wine we can find at the store, and like once every 6 months we would have one of these bottles, and now we're drinking them once a week, and I just feel like my mental that part's not burned out for me. What is ruined a bit for me is a lot of the cheaper red wines that aren't these. These are very good wines. Tobin James, very good winery. A+. I definitely every week think, am I really gonna be able to tell a difference between this? Is it gonna just kind of taste like last week's wine? And they're very different. They are different. Unless we are drinking like the same varietal from like the 1 year apart or something, it's generally pretty jarringly different between these two. It's not like red wine tastes like red wine. They're all red wine. Definitely not. This one just didn't do much for me, but we've had others recently where they've just been really like bold, complex, had a lot of notes, tasting notes going on, or just different, the viscosity of them, the acidity, the alcohol forwardness, all these various things that I don't know if that's what sommeliers talk about, but it's what I think about when I'm drinking these. And he's trying to pretend he's a sommelier. I would love to be one. I don't have that kind of no, I don't have that palate, mental capacity, time. But previous ones we've had the past couple of weeks have been better, I think. They have been good. We've had a couple good ones. We've had some really, really good private stashes in the past. I just don't think this is one of them. It's a good wine. Like I said, all these wines are good. If you see them on a wine menu somewhere, you should get them. So anyways, that's kind of our thoughts on the wine. Yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoyed it. I mean, that's why I gave it a 5, because it was not horrible. It was just very average, like very in the middle for me. 2018 is not our favorite of the private stashes, but that's okay. And I will consult my list. It just shows that we're not going to just rate every wine a 10. Yeah, it's truly like I'm in the middle of the last glass, and what do I feel? It's all a feeling for me. Gut feeling. So moving on to the movie rating out of 10, which is a little different than gut feeling, but still gut feeling does play a heavy role in it. I'll let you go first for this one. I feel like you're going to judge me no matter what score I give it, but I think I'm going to give it a 5.6. I'm going to give it a 1.6. Now, I'm not saying I think this is like cinematic gold. I think I've seen it before, and just like taking a step back of all of the things of movies, I appreciate it for what it is. I don't really see much cultural significance, given that I hadn't really heard of it or anything before that. I don't find it very quotable. I didn't find myself wanting to really rewatch it. Didn't really see anything that I think really influenced much. If anything, I think this was influenced by some recent movies more than it influenced anything else.
I can't really give it much more than that. It was a star-studded cast, and I think it was trying to be more than what it was.
I do not think that it is super well done. I think it could be better. I think I appreciate it for the fact that it is such a time capsule of 2010. Like all of these people were
it's very much a who's who of 2010.
So incredibly popular. It feels like such a throwback to, that time in our lives. I think it also, like you said, it was like influenced by the Love Actuallys, and then there were some others. There've been a couple others, these similar style movies since then that I think they all were of a certain time. I do appreciate the craft of trying to make, how many different people have a story in this? Like to intertwine all of that together, I think is something that is not easy. And it's hard to do super well, but I also appreciated just like the idea of looking at a holiday like Valentine's Day, which we don't really ever do anything super special, but like, I love you. It's great. Yeah, that
about love.
But like, that's not what it is for everybody. And to just like, to look at it from a bunch of different perspectives, I think is really interesting. And it just kind of makes you think of like, the broader scope of this like single day. Like some people hate it, some people love it, some people are heartbroken, some people like, there's just so much nuance to it that I think that's why I gave it the score that I did.
That's fair.
And and I have like some nostalgic voucher too. Like I have seen it many times.
I can imagine the nostalgia would play into it a bit more. And these scores, like we said, are subjective anyways. But moving on into the movie description, I will try to go first.
Sum this movie up
in a movie like this,
less than
it's
20
just
minutes.
A whole lot of various storylines of people from various ages exploring their idea of love on Valentine's Day and the good times and bad times that go along with that. I don't think I can get too specific without spending an hour and a half discussing the movie.
Yeah, I was going to see how long you were going to go to give the description.
That's all I got for that.
Because you could give like a one sentence description or like just retell the whole movie because there's a lot going on in this one. All right. The description, according to the TV, is more than a dozen Angelinos, Los Angeles people, navigate Valentine's Day from early morning until midnight. 3 couples awake together, but each relationship will sputter. A grade school boy wants flowers for his first true love. 2 high school seniors plan first time sex at noon. A TV sports reporter gets the assignment to find romance in LA. A star quarterback contemplates his future. 2 strangers meet on a plane. Grandparents together for years face a crisis. And I Hate Valentine's Day dinner beckons the lonely and the lied to.
They're not wrong. It just doesn't make it a very accurate description of the movie.
Yeah.
It's one of the things where the truth doesn't fully represent reality.
It was like too much, but not enough detail at the same time.
Like if I read it, I like the star quarterback. I would think more of like high school. Like
like what Taylor Lautner would. You'd be like, oh, he's got to be the star quarterback. Oh, never mind.
Expected him to play.
Yeah. Weird description.
And some things were more specific than others.
I will say like how it talks about, from early morning until midnight. It did feel like I experienced the whole Valentine's Day. Like not that I felt like the movie was like crazy long, but so much happens before the work day even starts in the movie. And I'm like, God, what time are these people waking up?
Right. That was one of my thoughts was like, this person is late for work and then like 20 other storylines happen and they're like, oh, and then I got to go stop to this place before I go to my work as an elementary school teacher. Yes. And I'm like, what, did you wake up at 3 a.m.?
That's what really got me is when Jennifer Garner was like, oh, let me go stop by and just chit chat with my friend Reed. I'm like, oh my God, like you're a teacher. You've got stuff to do. You're not just willy-nilly bopping around LA. You can't just do that.
There's putts over here. There's no traffic. Yeah. That to me was kind of like what is time to these people?
Yeah, 100%.
School starts at 3 p.m. Okay.
All right. Was the movie what you expected?
No. I thought it was going to be way fewer storylines and focus maybe on maybe one general storyline. I did not expect it to be this diverse of storylines, I should say.
When you said earlier that you hadn't actually seen it and you didn't know anything about it, and I was like, oh my God, there is a lot to this movie.
Yeah, I figured it'd be like a high school thing of like a bunch of people, participating in one love storyline, but it was a lot of love storylines.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't know what you're getting into, it's a lot. How well did it age?
I guess relatively fine. There were some things where they had like old cell phones that I think could have like changed some of these things. But overall, I don't think it aged really poorly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't a huge reliance on technology, and it was more about the relationships and the people and the human interactions.
Yeah, I think the part that didn't necessarily, I don't know if I could say aged well, but it was very much a who's who of 2010 that 14 years later would be a lot different. Most of those people are not super relevant. Taylor Swift being like the most relevant of them, and who was the most like minor
and the least relevant in this movie.
Yeah,
this is for the 4 people listening to this, I do not care for her. And I was talking to my friends while watching this, and we both agreed that I think this is what cemented me not liking her. I was not a fan of her music first. Like she was a country star. I did not like country music. I didn't care for her. And then I saw her in this and I was like, yeah, I don't like her.
Yeah, I get that.
And that's honestly, you trace it back to 2010. It's really this movie that just seals it.
I can see her acting in this being really divisive of whether or not you think it's like so cute and endearing or the just absolute worst.
And it comes down to, it boils down to this. Yeah, I just don't care for her. Anyways.
Could this movie be made today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be slightly different with maybe they throw a bit more modern technology things in there. Different actors, being that it would be 2024 instead of 2010.
And I do think the storylines would probably shift a little bit more modern as well.
They'd be a bit more diverse too, I think.
Yes, there'd be more diversity, as it should be, and just more types. I mean, they did focus on a lot of different types of love, like mother-son love, like all that. I mean, all of that stuff. I think it would probably be a little different now. But overall, I think you could have a similar story, which, I mean, I think is cool. I think it's an interesting, like, as a human to human, experiencing other people's experiences.
Yeah, and there was some diversity in this. It was just like 2010's diverse. I think it's people have understood that that's not quite
that's
the
not
level
true
of diversity when everyone's just a bunch of like white heterosexual couples in this. But it was a little bit more than just that. But I think nowadays it'd be a bit more diverse. But otherwise, I don't see anything that could prevent it from being made today or anything like that. Did they say the title of the movie in the movie?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah. Valentine's Day was a pretty big recurring theme in the whole.
They weren't trying to get cute with the title. They were just calling it what it is.
Yeah. One thing that did kind of surprise me was that it was just when I saw like all the storylines that it was everything took place on just this one Valentine's Day. There wasn't any sort of like,
a little
follow up or anything of like
intro,
a flash forward to like next Valentine's Day or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you weren't tired before you watched this, just to see all the things that happened on this one day. And you realize that this is like a movie about 12 people, and you realize that like that many different storylines are happening for billions of people around the world.
Yeah. Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things?
Well, I think everybody had already done big things before getting
there weren't really
this
any,
movie.
Yeah, there weren't really any minor characters that hadn't done something already.
It was She Who Must Not Be Named's first acting debut.
Yeah, I think Taylor Swift did go on to do bigger things than just this movie. A lot of
she
the other
already
ones,
had a several-year-long career before this.
Yes. I think a lot of the actors that were in this had already done bigger things and were doing this to be part of an ensemble cast or part of like a fun passion thing. Like this was not Julia Roberts' big.
I was just about to say, I mean, obviously this was Julia Roberts' debut. I mean, who'd heard of her before 2010?
Yeah. And this up-and-comer Bradley Cooper. That I think for the most part, this seemed to be more of like just a ensemble cast. I wouldn't say it was.
I imagine this would be so fun though. Like you're an actor that does all of the stuff that's like so much work and works and like so focused. And then you do something where you probably go in for like what? 2 weeks max.
I mean, a lot of these people like didn't have much screen time because it's a whole bunch of diverse storylines. It's not like you're going to be acting for 50 minutes of dialogue or anything like this. You're going to be on there for like 12 minutes total of dialogue.
And you just go and you work with a whole bunch of other stars. But I was wondering, like watching it, like Ashton Kutcher and Jennifer Garner, I'm like, is that weird? I mean, like you guys are both like superstars. And I mean, I think back to like The Office where they wanted like unknown people and like so many things are like trying to focus on not having these big name celebrities that like all of these big names that have to have this like romantic relationship. Is that weird?
Probably not. For them, it's probably just acting for the most part.
It just feels weird as an audience member because I like feel like they should all be friends in real life. And then and I'm like, this is not right.
But especially for them, I think it's more, they've done this. This is their job. If it's someone who's not really done acting, like someone like Taylor Swift, who it's one of their first acting roles they've not done, or they've not done many, it might be a bit weirder. But for someone like Ashton Kutcher, I'm sure he's had plenty of on camera kisses before that point. That I doubt that was really a big deal for him.
Yeah, and that's what I kept telling myself. But it was just something about it. It was like you felt like you were watching like siblings because you're like, everybody knows these people. Like they should know each other. They should be friends. Like this is weird. But
I'm sure Jackie,
Mila Kunis.
No, I had a sentence that I was going to say, then I forgot it because I was thinking of these names. I'm sure that Jackie forgave Kelso for that.
I'm sure she did. Oh, yeah.
What impact do you think the movie had on pop culture?
I don't really think it had an impact on pop culture. I think it was a part of,
it
was its own pop culture moment. And
I think it was more trying to piggyback on other things that I'll get back, or I'll touch on in my notes.
I mean, it was a good time capsule. And this is something I've been meaning to say is like, how well does the movie represent the decade that it's in? Even if it's made in that decade, like, I mean, thinking back to the Future, like, I feel like they did a really good job of like representing the 80s and representing the 50s. Like they really were like intentional with a lot of stuff, and watching this and just seeing like the fashion, especially again, male fashion never really changes, but the peep toe pumps and the wide chunky belts and just like oversized t-shirts, so much stuff where it was like, I remember trying to wear that stuff or being like, I wish I could pull it off, but I can't. And like, it's so much a time capsule.
Did you watch
of that
and you still think like, oh, they're pulling it off, or are you like, ooh, that's very much fun at the time?
It looks cringy now. Like it looks wrong because we are again 14 years removed. Every time I thought about it during the movie, I just want to throw up a little bit. Like it still doesn't
I didn't even
sit
notice
with
most of that in this. It didn't seem like that far off because that was, I think that, that was when we were in like college age. It didn't seem. That's when time stopped for me.
and I mean, I still mostly wear the same clothes. I have not changed my fashion all that much. I'm trying, but I still feel most comfortable in stuff that I was wearing back in college, but it was noticeable. And I don't know if it was noticeable because there's all this like resurgence of like people on TikTok and Instagram that are like, oh, like back in college and making all of these reels and TikToks and stuff that call out that fashion that I don't know that if I hadn't seen those to have been like, oh yeah, that was something that people wore, if I would have noticed those things as much.
But now like the fashion we see today is the stuff that back in college and mid to late high school that I would have been like never caught dead in that or made fun of anyone who even thought to be like, I'm going to wear mom jeans.
Oh, but they're so much more comfortable than
I'm sure
jeans.
They are, but just like, it's just jarring.
It is. It all comes full circle.
Last question being, do you feel culture after watching it?
I had already seen it before, so no.
Not really. I don't know. I could have gone without seeing it. Like, just a movie. It was a rom-com.
Yeah. And I mean, I do feel like it had that like style of movie. Like there were a lot of things where I was like classic rom-com of that time that, it fit into that bubble. I'm excited to dive more into rom-coms. Stick around for season 5.
Yes. I'm more excited for that than I was for this movie.
I think it will be interesting, especially to reflect back on this once we have started like at the 60s and seen a progression of how movies go. I think it'll be interesting to see how this fits in that.
That'll be very fun. So moving on to notes.
Would you like to go first or do you want me to go first?
I will go first. My first note was that I don't think Jamie Foxx is a good actor.
Yeah, I didn't really buy it either.
Like people really love him in things. He was in Django Unchained and
the Ray Charles movie.
I think his movie. And I just even in those, I didn't really know if he was like a good actor or if he just was playing like a really uncomfortable guy. But
he does seem uncomfortable. I think that's the right word.
But it just doesn't seem like he's really acting as much as he is just trying his best to read his lines and not feeling like he's fully confident in it.
Yeah. I mean, and there was stuff, and I don't know, I was trying to decide, like, is it something about his character in this? I was definitely thinking about it. And then I was like, or was there something in the news about him lately, but he has been ill?
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I do not really keep up with pop culture the way I used to. But something was weird, and I think maybe it's just that I don't love his
movies I've seen him in. I'm like, I don't know if he's just like really good at acting and I don't get it, or if he's just not good at acting and
way above your like.
Everyone's already committed so much they're too afraid to tell him he's not that great at what he's doing. I don't know. Next note being that Taylor Swift is even worse.
Thank you.
Her acting was just not good. You could tell she was trying so hard, but it seemed like she was in like a middle school skit.
It's nauseating. It makes me this. I think this is what I always reflect back to whenever her songs come on the radio, which is freaking constantly, or whenever I see her literally anywhere because everybody's so obsessed with her. But like this is what I come back to, and I just like it's like nails on a chalkboard watching her act. Oh, it's so bad. It is so bad.
It's like the first scene when she's in the elevator. You can tell what she's trying to do, but she's not doing it and not pulling it off. It just seems really awkward, her trying to talk. And then later when she's doing her dance routine on the field and she's just being annoying and not in like a cute, funny way, just more of a, I wish this scene was over kind of way. And I don't dislike her like you do. She's fine. I think she was put in this movie because she was someone who they thought was going to get people to watch the movie, I guess, but just, it was not good.
Yeah. And I mean, she and I are similar in age. We were in high school at the same time. Like I get the type of person that they were trying to go for, but she did not get there. And I just hate it. I don't, it's not a good, I wish that whole storyline was just removed.
They could have just dropped it.
Because they're not really that intertwined with any of the other characters. So that if just that storyline was pulled, nothing, you wouldn't miss it.
Actually, I'll get to that after this next note.
Okay.
My note was, this appears to be a blatant ripoff of Love Actually. So starting with the movie poster, which is just a whole bunch of like the people, the stars there, that that seems exactly the same style as that. The boy running away, or sorry, someone running away at the airport, like leaving security and running through to like talk to someone that they love.
Okay.
The guy playing the guitar naked.
Okay.
The lovesick kid who's desperate for a girl from a different country / ethnicity, and also really misses his mom.
Okay.
The infidelity leading to like tears and like the feelings of betrayal, like the old couple, but also like the Emma Thompson relationship whatever there. The controversial press conference. They have the prime minister in Love Actually, and they have the quarterback in this one. There were just so many things where I'm like, and also obviously the fact that there's like so many different storylines relating to a particular holiday, an ensemble cast. It just felt like this was trying to capitalize on Love Actually, and it just felt like it wasn't pulled off as well, because like Valentine's Day is not as great of a movie holiday for sure as Christmas is.
I mean, I definitely always was like, oh, it's similar to Love Actually. There's lots of like big name stars and there's lots of storylines, and it's like interesting to see how everybody is kind of intertwined. I don't think I realized how much it overlapped, but yeah.
And that was just a couple there. We'll just skip that. My next note was that Valentine's Day in LA is much different than the rest of the world, because this whole movie is taking place over the course of a single Valentine's Day, and it's warm and sunny and kind of nice. And in most places, I think in the US, at least, Valentine's Day is usually a pretty ugly gray day.
I don't even. It's so stupid. I've seen this movie so many times, but I don't think that ever occurred to me that it was like Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is like
short sleeves. It's LA summer, and like most places in the US, Valentine's Day is just like whipping cold, and people desperately trying to get their flowers to someone without them freezing. And just it's not
how they even have flowers to send to people is the miracle of miracles.
It to me, I thought of how Christmas movies are, when every Christmas movie, for the most part, it takes place on like a actual like snowy day, and it's a white Christmas. And I think in most places in the US, in the world, it doesn't usually snow on Christmas. But it becomes
this ideal scenario
in every Christmas movie, that it just kind of seemed like almost the opposite for me. But my next note was that this movie just felt kind of rushed. Some of the acting, some of the scenes, it seemed like it being an ensemble cast and a bunch of big names, they didn't probably spend too much time taking a lot of takes to get this right, or really caring about that. That some of the acting, it seemed like they were either breaking, or they were
I did notice some breaking.
Yeah, just they were ad-libbing some of these things, or just improving for some of the scenes, and it didn't really seem like it was. It seemed like it was kind of rushed in that way.
I agree. I mean, I've never thought this was a fantastic movie. Like, it's a cutesy, like, oh, like, haha, let's all watch something on the background while we're all hanging out, like, back in college and stuff. I mean, I haven't seen it in a really long time, so I remembered a lot of the storylines, but just like remembering how everything was, intertwined was interesting for me. But I don't think the acting is super, which is so disappointing, because it is such a big name cast. Like, it's not great.
Yeah. I mean, they were having fun doing it. Like, I'm not. Oh yeah. It's not like it was absolutely terrible. You just kind of tell that it was filmed probably to fit around most of these actors' schedules, and that they were like, okay, I'm going to give you, an hour to film my 3-minute scene, and after that, I'm gone. And so they were just kind of sitting there playing around, and they probably cut together what the best they could to splice it into a movie. And it was just kind of like the overall vibe of that.
Yeah, and that's honestly not something I'd really thought about until we were watching like some behind the scenes of, I think it was Trolls for, animated movies, because our kids are really into them right now. And just thinking like, you're this animated voice, so you just stand and you read all your lines, maybe over like a week total, just to like, get all the parts out and figure out how they want it to sound. And then you're done. And whereas you think like, it takes certain movies like years or like months and months to film, and it's just like super long drawn out process, that when you think like, oh, like something like this, they might have only worked like 2 days and that's it. Like
a day.
Kathy Bates was probably like, she worked half a day and was like done.
Yeah.
That
she probably didn't have to spend much time getting into character too. It just kind of seemed like she was just playing a normal role for her.
Yeah. It's just so interesting to think about all the different ranges of movies.
My next note was that this felt like a Princess Diaries reunion too in 2010, where you had, I don't remember their actors' names from Princess Diaries, but the guy who plays the stylist, whatever
Paolo.
person. There you go. The guy who plays her assistant or...
Thank you for being here today. Oh my God, what's his name? He's a driver. He's a security guard. It'll come to me. I'm going to look it up because I need to know.
Well, I forgot her name too, so...
Mia Mionette, Thermopolis,
No.
Mia Mionette,
What's the
Thermopolis,
actress's
Rinaldi, Anne Hathaway,
Anne
Princess of Genovia.
Yes, Anne Hathaway. Just a lot of main characters that were from that movie in this, but also that scene where what's his face, the stylist guy was in it, and he's playing a person working at the oversized baggage counter or whatever. And after like a quick chat, just gives him a ticket that's going to get him through security.
You can get anywhere in here.
And I'm like, post 9/11, absolutely not.
Yep, I thought
this movie took place 9 years after that. He ain't getting anywhere in an airport without a legit ticket.
His name is Joe.
Joe.
And she goes, Joey, and he goes, no, Joe. That's my favorite line. I can't believe I forgot that. Okay,
you don't know Joe.
Okay, I'm back.
So,
yeah, I definitely thought that too. When he was like, I mean, he's like big, like, like talking a big game. Oh, this is for oversized luggage only. You can't be here, blah, blah, blah. And then this ticket will get you anywhere. You say she is sunshine. This ticket will get you in the airport. Nobody in the airport is just going to give you a ticket.
Real fast, unbelievable, real like over the top cheesy. It just kind of didn't really fit.
I didn't like that either.
And my final note was that there were just too many characters. And I think that's what I was going to get into, was that there were too many characters in this. And I know in Love Actually, there were a couple characters and storylines that they actually ended up cutting from the movie because it was too much. With this, I think part of the issue was that there were too many big name actors that if you cut it and you just had like Taylor Lautner hanging out in the background of a scene later, it would have felt weird. Some of the people they had playing scenes, I think in Love Actually, some of the minor roles they ended up cutting, I don't think were made actors, which allowed them to cut this. I think it would have been kind of tough to cut some of these entirely, given that they had so much overlap. I think they could have done it for the most part, but I think if they'd cut Taylor Swift, they would have made some pre-Swifties pretty angry.
I think that the Taylor Swift, Taylor Lautner could be cut. And honestly, even like Queen Latifah isn't as like, her lines were not, there wasn't as many that, like if you're having to cut people, like those ones would probably be missed the least of the cast, but and I do agree. There was too many. Yeah.
They're trying to push too many in there, and I think they probably committed to a bunch. And then when they were cutting it together, they realized that they would probably get into a whole bunch of issues with the agents of the set actors if they cut it. So they just had to put it all together as best they could.
And it's a fine rom-com, but could have been better. There was a lot of potential, I think, in this movie.
That's why I said it felt kind of rushed. I think it could have been done better. But I don't know how much they could have really cut with all of those big name actors and have their big agents too.
Especially if like you said, if there had been like this was from Valentine's Day's past and this was like forward. If there had been more than just like this one 24-hour period, I think you could have probably played with that a little bit better. But yeah, it was rushed and there was a lot of people and there was a lot going on. Very hard to follow.
So that wraps up my notes.
Okay, so moving on to my notes, my first note is that it's directed by Gary Marshall. He has directed a gajillion things. My personal favorites being Princess Diaries and Hocus Pocus.
That makes sense there.
Yes. And something interesting I found out about him while I was looking all of that up is that he has like all of his family in all of his movies, including his daughter who is in this and in Princess Diaries. I think she's actually in all of his movies, like on screen. And it was in Princess Diaries as like the assistant to Queen Clarice, and then she was the florist assistant, the blonde. And I was like, oh, she was in Princess Diaries. So I also have a note that this was a lot of cast reunions. So you have the Topher Grace, Ashton Kutcher, That 70s Show reunion, and then Princess Diaries was, I mean, Gary Marshall directed it too. So Anne Hathaway, Hector Elizondo, who was Joe, and Larry Miller, who was Paolo, and then Charlotte, who was played by Kathleen Marshall. So lots of reunions, and I'm sure there's probably, like, I don't know everybody's filmography that well.
That many actors in there, you're gonna have a lot of overlap and crossovers there.
But I mean, it's fun, you know, as someone, you know, in this nostalgia period that we are living in, to be like, oh my gosh, like I grew up watching you all in these movies or this show, and to see everybody back together as adults. And God, if they were back together now, whew, people would lose their minds. Like I've already talked about, is fashion is definitely 14 years outdated. Where, you know, we started talking about this movie, and I was like, oh, like 2010 was not that long ago, but then watching it very much felt to me.
To you, I honestly didn't even notice it.
It was nothing like super egregious, like looking at the 1950s and being like, wow, we don't dress like that anymore. But it was enough where I feel like I was able to visibly notice how much, like, oh, that dress or those shoes or those things were like not in style anymore. Yeah.
I made a notice that they showed more of the high school kids, but I didn't really notice too much from the rest of everyone else.
And then that's really all my notes as far as but except I have one more note that is where little Edison says MapQuested.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I just felt like, you know, also, you know, fashion was outdated, but how much technology was outdated. Emma Roberts had her Bluetooth headset in when she was trying to drive around and find Edison. He told
her AirPods.
Ashton Kutcher to MapQuest the directions to the school. And you said something about, like, you know, sending dirty pictures, and you looked at the phone and you said, oh, never mind. Like, there's not enough pixels for that. Like, there wasn't. I guess it looked like Ashton Kutcher had a smartphone or had an iPhone.
This is in
but
2010.
Like pretty much everybody had Blackberries. Like, it was not.
Well, it was a Blackberry that she showed on that.
It looked like he had an iPhone, but I think everybody else.
Well, the iPhone was about 3 years old. So I remember when I was back in college trying to write, like, my first smartphone app and trying to do some research on, like,
so casual,
how many people had it or had smartphones or anything like that. And it was a very small percentage in 2010, because that would have been when we were end of freshman or into sophomore year. And by the time we, like, graduated college, the number was, you know, well over 50%, the majority. That at that time, especially filming this in probably 2009, the, you know, iPhone, Android phones was very, very much in the minority. That not surprising. They should have a BlackBerry there. Kind of dated it a little bit,
right? And like, it kind of hurts a little bit because you're like, God, that was so long ago. But at the same time, it just like feels so nostalgic that I feel like there was a couple other, like, technology things though that I was like, oh, that's outdated or that's different.
Well, he had to go to the airport to talk to whatever his friend was, because texting, I think, wasn't in, like, everything wasn't as
it showed up that he was calling her, but she was going through security, so she didn't have her phone physically on her. It was, and she didn't have a smartwatch to be buzzing. But I guess
now everyone's got their phones embedded on themselves all the time.
Yeah, you know, microchips and all that stuff. So, I mean, the technology was probably more noticeable than the fashion, but I did notice fashion. But I do enjoy this movie. I think also maybe because I haven't watched a rom-com in a long time, and we've been doing all these sci-fi movies, that to watch something that was just, like, very lighthearted and, like, very easy to watch was just fun for me. And again, the nostalgia factor watching it came out when we were in college, so going to see it with all my girlfriends and, like, you know.
Yeah, I think the part that kind of brought it down for me was the trying to be Love Actually and trying to capitalize, I think, on that. If it had been trying to do its own storyline, I would have been a bit more, you know, into it. I think that was the main detractor for me, but.
And I will say, I didn't know Love Actually that well when I saw this. I feel like I've seen Love Actually exponentially more since we've started dating than I had beforehand. I think I watched, like, half of it once in college. So I didn't know it that well when this came out. So this was more prevalent to me.
Way to base it off of, yeah.
But also, like, yes, capitalizing on it, but it was also still, like, what, 7 years after Love Actually? 2003 to 2010. So it's not like it was like, oh, it came out last year, let's make another movie. I mean, I feel like I did, and maybe Love Actually was kind of having its, like, second wind or something.
I almost feel like Love Actually, and obviously I was really young when Love Actually first came out, but I feel like it really kind of, like, just slowly rose over time in the US, that I think that they were like, oh, let's do our own version of it and try to capitalize on it. But
there is another, not sequel because it's not related, but there is another style of this movie about New Year's Eve. So if maybe look out for New Year's Eve 2025, maybe we'll get a bonus episode of that movie. yeah, I think that wraps it up for my notes. And I am excited to dive deeper into rom-coms. I am excited to finish out our sci-fi season. Thank you for tuning in and listening to our bonus episode. I hope everyone has a happy Valentine's Day.
We'll be back with your regularly scheduled seasonal episodes as soon as next week?
No, I think the next episode will come out tomorrow. So we're kind of all wonky on the season of when we're filming things and recording this stuff. So as long as I can get this stuff out, there will be a new episode out tomorrow, or I guess tonight at midnight, however time works. And if you are enjoying the podcast, if you could rate and review and subscribe, comment, just let us know your thoughts, feelings. If you have rom-com suggestions for season 5, we are in the early stages of planning season 5. So we would love suggestions for that. Yep. And hope everyone has a happy Valentine's Day. So
add us on AIM, Bing us, do all the things,
Yeah. Send us, send us a BBM. Yes, I was just getting there. Oh my gosh, I loved BBMing. It was my favorite. So
and I
need a minute to recover from that.
And we will catch you guys, I guess, tomorrow. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, have a great one. Bye.